The first time my father told me to bury the slide projector, I was already dead. Not dead in the poetic sense. Not heartbroken. Not ruined. Not dead to the world. I mean, my body was lying at the bottom of the old quarry outside Bellwether, my lungs full of black water, while my father stood above the cliff with both hands gripping the rusted guardrail. I remember the rain running down his face. I remember him whispering my name. And I remember my cousin Caleb stepping beside him and saying, "It's done." Then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes again, I was 17, lying in my childhood bedroom beneath the glow in the dark stars I had peeled from the ceiling years ago. My alarm clock flashed 6:14 a.m. The date on my phone was September 3rd, 6 years before my death, the morning of my first day at Bellwether Academy. For several seconds, I could not breathe. I touched my throat, expecting bruises from the hands that had forced me over the edge. Nothing. My hair was shorter. My fingers were unscarred. On my desk sat the cheap silver camera I had saved all summer to buy, still wrapped in plastic. From downstairs came the smell of burnt toast and my father arguing with the radio. I should have screamed. Instead, I laughed. It came out ugly, more like a cough scraped over glass, because the last time I had heard my father's voice, he had been begging Caleb to tell the police that my fall was an accident. He had known it was not. He had known for years what Caleb was capable of. He had known what had been hidden inside our house, inside the academy, inside the old projector he kept locked in the basement. And he had still chosen silence. I dressed in my old Navy uniform with hands that would not stop shaking. In my first life, I had been thrilled to wear it. Bellwether Academy accepted only 40 scholarship students each year, and I had believed earning a place there would save us. My father repaired antique cameras in a narrow shop below our apartment. We were always one unpaid bill away from losing everything. Bellwether promised university recommendations, internships, prestige. It also promised me proximity to Caleb, the polished golden boy my aunt had raised like a prince. I had thought family would protect me. That belief had killed me before the quarry ever did. Downstairs, my father stood at the kitchen counter, scraping black edges off toast with a butter knife. At 44, he looked younger than I remembered, though grief had already carved pale grooves around his mouth. His dark hair was still mostly black. His left hand did not tremble yet. He glanced up. "You're awake early." I stared at him so long that his expression changed. What? In my first life, I had kissed his cheek that morning. I had told him not to worry. I had promised I would make him proud. This time I asked, "Where is Grandpa's slide projector?" The butter knife slipped from his fingers and struck the counter. Silence expanded through the kitchen. My father looked toward the basement door, then back at me. His face emptied itself of every expression. "Why?" "I want to use it for the history presentation." "You haven't even started school." "I like preparing early." His eyes narrowed. He had always known when I lied, but he had spent most of my first life pretending not to notice the larger lies around us. He wiped his hands on a towel and said, "It doesn't work. It worked before Grandpa died. That was 10 years ago. Then I'll repair it." "No." The word landed too quickly. My pulse steadied. There it was. The fear I had remembered. Small, sharp, undeniable. My father saw me see it. He turned away and reached for the kettle. "Use the digital projector at school like everyone else." "What's in the metal slide case?" The kettle clanged against the sink. He did not answer. I had not known about the metal case when I was 17 the first time. I had discovered it at 21. After Grandpa's old workbench collapsed and split a false drawer beneath the basement stairs. Inside were 87 glass-mounted slides labeled with dates, initials, and room numbers. Most showed ordinary academy events from the late 1990s, ceremonies, debate teams, laboratory demonstrations, donors shaking hands. But 9 slides were different. They revealed ledger pages, test papers, and students standing beside envelopes of cash. One showed my father, 19 years old, holding a document while Bellwether's current headmaster stood beside him. I had taken the slides to Caleb. That mistake had started the countdown to my death. My father placed both palms flat on the counter. "Listen to me, Mara. Whatever you think you know about that projector, forget it. So, it exists. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. He crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and gripped my shoulders. His face was close enough for me to smell coffee on his breath. Do not go into the basement. Do not look for the projector. Do not ask your aunt, Caleb, anyone at Bellwether, or anyone else about it. Do you understand?
His panic should have frightened me.
Instead, it confirmed that this life could be changed. I gently removed his hands. Perfectly. Then I picked up my school bag and walked out. Behind me, the basement lock clicked. That was my first victory. Bellwether Academy sat on a hill above town, all limestone arches, manicured hedges, and stained glass windows commissioned by people who wanted their names remembered. On my first day in my first life, I had stood outside the gates and felt small. This time I noticed the cameras above the entrance, the side doors without sensors, and the thin strip of ivy hiding a maintenance ladder. Rebirth had not made me braver. It had made me observant. Caleb waited near the fountain, surrounded by students who already laughed before he finished speaking. He was 18, broad-shouldered, bright-eyed, immaculate. He wore his prefect badge as if he had been born with it pinned over his heart. When he saw me, his smile widened. There she is. Bellwether's newest charity case. Everyone around him laughed. In my first life, I had laughed too, desperate to prove I could take a joke. This time I stopped directly in front of him and looked at his shoes. He glanced down.
What?
Nothing. I was wondering whether blood stains patent leather. The laughter died. Caleb's smile remained, but the muscles beneath it tightened. Still doing the creepy photographer thing? Still hiding behind jokes. A girl beside him gasped softly. Caleb leaned closer. You've been here 30 seconds, and you're already nervous. I walked past him before he could answer. Pattern broken. People like Caleb controlled rooms by predicting reactions. Embarrassment, anger, retreat. Give them something they could not categorize, and for one precious moment, their confidence became confusion. I needed many such moments. At assembly, Headmaster Gideon Vale welcomed us from the stage. He was silver-haired, elegant, and beloved by parents who confused calmness with goodness. In my first life, he had written the recommendation that earned me a place at Halden University. 2 years later, he had threatened to revoke it unless I stopped asking why scholarship records had been altered. Now, I watched his hands. When he spoke about Bellwether's unbroken tradition of merit, his right thumb rubbed the edge of his signet ring 3 times.
A tell.
I remembered that motion from the quarry investigation when he told police he had barely known me. Beside him sat my Aunt Evelyn, chairwoman of the Academy Board, and Caleb's mother. She wore ivory silk and a smile sharp enough to open envelopes. My father's older sister had paid half our rent after my mother died. She had also spent years reminding us that generosity could be withdrawn. Her gaze found me in the scholarship section. For 1 second, she looked almost afraid. Then Headmaster Vale announced the Founders Exhibition, an annual competition in which students reconstructed an important event from Bellwether history. The winner received $10,000 and a guaranteed recommendation to Halden. My first life project had been a documentary about the Academy's wartime nurses. Caleb had stolen my interviews, claimed I fabricated evidence, and won with a shallow presentation about the school chapel. This time, when Vale said students could use archival materials, I raised my hand. Yes, Miss Mercer? Are privately held photographs admissible? His thumb stopped against his ring. What kind of photographs? Old slides. A pause. Tiny. Nearly invisible. Aunt Evelyn's pen snapped between her fingers. I smiled. The projector had not even left the basement, and already 3 adults were frightened of it. After assembly, I was summoned to the headmaster's office before I had attended a single class. His secretary offered me tea, with the solemnity of someone preparing a witness. Aunt Evelyn was already inside, seated beside Vale's desk. Caleb leaned against the bookcase, turning my future into a family meeting. Mara, my aunt said, your father tells me you've become interested in old equipment.
Fast.
My father had called her before I reached school. I sat without being invited. I've always liked photography. There's photography, Caleb said, and there's digging through dead people's junk. I looked at him. Grandpa died before you were born. Interesting that you know what he kept. His fingers stopped tapping the shelf. Aunt Evelyn folded her hands. Your grandfather documented many academy events. Some people did not consent to permanent records. Privacy matters. So does history. Vale smiled with professional warmth. Naturally. The archive contains approved material you may use. Approved by whom? The board, which Aunt Evelyn chairs. The warmth vanished from his eyes. Is there a problem, Miss Mercer? Not yet. Aunt Evelyn stood. Enough. Your father has forbidden you from touching that projector. I didn't realize family rules were enforced by the academy. Caleb laughed once, but no one joined him. Vale came around his desk and lowered his voice. Young people sometimes mistake secrets for treasure. Usually they are only burdens left by adults who knew better. I remembered him standing in the rain at the quarry, telling my father, she should have known when to stop. My nails pressed crescents into my palms. I'll remember that, I said. On the way out, Caleb caught my elbow. His grip looked casual to anyone watching. What did you find? He whispered. I turned my wrist exactly as the self-defense instructor had taught me 3 years in my previous life, and broke his hold. Nothing, I said. That's why you're scared. His face changed. Only for a blink. Then he smiled. Careful, cousin. Bellwether eats people who arrive hungry. I know. I left him standing there. At lunch, I found the one person I had failed most completely in my first life. Nadia Cho sat alone beneath the east stairwell, arranging carrot sticks by length while reading a book about forensic chemistry. She had been my first friend at Bellwether and the first person to warn me about Caleb. I had ignored her. When Caleb framed her for leaking exam questions, I had believed him. Nadia lost her scholarship, transferred schools, and disappeared from my life. 2 years after my death, according to the newspaper article I had once glimpsed in whatever space existed between dying and waking, she became an investigative journalist. This time I sat opposite her. She looked up. That seed is wet. I checked. It was. A bottle in my bag had leaked. Pattern interrupted. I stood so quickly my tray tilted, and Nadia caught my apple before it rolled away. That was less dramatic than I intended, I said. She examined me for 3 seconds, then moved her books. Try the dry side. We ate in silence until I asked, how would you preserve evidence if powerful people knew you had it? She did not choke, laugh, or ask why. She bit a carrot and said, evidence of what? I don't know yet. Then you don't have evidence. You have an object and a theory. That was Nadia. Precise enough to be irritating. Honest enough to be invaluable. Suppose it's photographic. Original film? Glass-mounted slides. Color or black and white? Mostly color reversal, probably Ektachrome. Some duplicates of documents. Now she looked interested. Store them cool, dry, dark. Photograph each slide over a light source. Record both sides, labels, scratches, mounting. Never clean them before documenting condition. Make copies in separate places. Don't tell the suspected person what you have. I may have already announced it in assembly. Nadia stared. I said I had a plan. I didn't say it was a good one. Why announce it? To make them move. Her eyes narrowed. You want to flush out whoever is afraid? Yes. And what happens when they move toward you? I record it. For the first time, she smiled. That is a terrible plan. Will you help?
No.
I nodded. Fair. She pushed half her carrots toward me. Show me one slide first. That night, my father slept in a chair facing the basement door. I waited until 2:11 a.m., slipped through my bedroom window, climbed down the fire escape, and entered his camera shop from the alley using the spare key hidden behind the drain pipe. The basement could be reached through the shop stockroom. My father had forgotten that the old lock opened from both sides. The stairs creaked beneath me. I froze. Upstairs, the chair scraped. I descended the remaining steps in darkness, crossed the basement, and crouched beside Grandpa's workbench. In my first life, the false drawer had opened by accident when the left leg collapsed. Now I pressed the carved wooden rosette beneath the tabletop and heard a spring release. The drawer slid forward. Empty. My heart dropped. Then the projector clicked behind me. A beam of white light cut across the basement and struck the wall. My father stood beside the machine, one hand on the switch. The projected image showed a young woman on Bellwether's stage receiving a medal. She had my eyes, my chin, and a white ribbon in her dark hair. My mother. I had never seen that photograph. My father's voice emerged rough. You were always going to find it. Where are the slides? Gone. You moved them this morning. Yes. Where? He changed the slide. My mother now stood beside Aunt Evelyn and Headmaster Vale, all three wearing student uniforms. Evelyn's smile was radiant. Vale's arm rested around my mother's shoulders. My father said, "Your mother was Bellwether's first full scholarship winner from our side of town. She was brilliant, better than all of them. She built the original Founders Exhibition project using this projector." I stared at the image. You told me she never attended Bellwether.
Elite.
The admission was so quiet that anger took a moment to reach me. What else did you lie about? He changed the slide again. A newspaper clipping filled the wall. Student disqualified after exam fraud discovery. Beneath the headline was my mother's school photograph. She was accused of stealing the national chemistry paper, my father said. They found photographs of the test in her locker. She lost her scholarship. Her university offer disappeared. Everyone called her a cheat. Was she?
No.
Who framed her? His gaze moved toward the projected image of Evelyn. I already knew the answer. Still, hearing it mattered. My sister, he said. The basement seemed to tilt. Why? Your mother discovered Evelyn had been selling advance copies of internal exams to wealthy students. Vale helped her access the papers. Your grandfather photographed everything because he was repairing equipment in the archive rooms. Your mother planned to expose them during the Founders Exhibition. But they framed her first. Yes. And you knew. I was 19. Evelyn said she would have me arrested as an accomplice. She said she would destroy our father's shop. I believed her. You stayed silent. I thought I could fix it privately. A bitter laugh escaped me. Did you? He looked at the floor. My mother died when I was 7. I remembered hospital rooms, whispered arguments, and my father telling me stress had weakened her heart. In my first life, I accepted that grief was an explanation. Now, every memory sharpened. Did Mom know you stayed silent? Yes. Did she forgive you?
No.
The honesty struck harder than another lie would have. He removed the slide and switched off the projector. Darkness swallowed my mother's face. Give me the case, I said.
No.
Those slides could clear her name. They can destroy yours. My name was destroyed anyway. He looked at me sharply. I had said too much. What does that mean? I stepped closer. It means people like Evelyn don't stop because we behave. They stop when they lose the power to continue. My father reached beneath the workbench and lifted the metal slide case. He held it against his chest. For 25 years, he said, I have kept this locked away. Every time I thought about exposing them, something happened. A tax audit. A broken shop window.
A threat to take you from me.
When your mother became ill, Evelyn paid for treatment. She made sure I understood the price. She bought your silence. She bought time with you.
No.
She rented your obedience. His face crumpled, then hardened. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Fear became your routine, and eventually you called it protection. He flinched. I took the case. For a moment he resisted. Then his grip weakened. Bury it, he whispered. What? Take the projector, the slides, everything. Go past the quarry, into the pine field. Bury it deep enough that no one finds it. His hands began to shake. Not lightly. Violently. The metal latches rattled between us. That was when I noticed the fresh red line around his wrist and the mud on his shoes. Someone had already come for the slides that evening.
Who hurt you?
I asked. He pulled down his sleeve. No one. Caleb.
No.
Evelyn. Stop.
Vale.
My father looked toward the basement window. A shadow moved across the frosted glass. Then a brick crashed through it. The brick struck the projector stand. Glass exploded. The machine toppled sideways, its lens cracking against the concrete floor. My father shoved me behind the workbench as a second object came through the window. Not a brick. A burning bottle. Flame rolled across the floor in a bright orange sheet. For half a second, neither of us moved. Then the smoke alarm screamed. My father grabbed an extinguisher from the stairs. I snatched the slide case and kicked the burning bottle away from the shelves of film stock. Chemicals caught easily. Whoever had thrown it knew exactly where to aim. White powder swallowed the flames. My eyes watered. Through the broken window, footsteps pounded down the alley. I ran upstairs. "Mara," my father shouted. I ignored him, crossed the shop, and burst through the rear door. A hooded figure was climbing the alley fence. I raised my phone and took 6 photographs. The person dropped to the other side, but not before one shoe caught on the wire. Patent leather. The same narrow heel and silver buckle Caleb had worn that morning. I did not chase him. In my first life, anger had made me reckless. This time, evidence mattered more than satisfaction. I photographed the shoe print in the mud, the broken window, the bottle, the extinguisher residue, and the red mark on my father's wrist. Then I emailed everything to a new account under a name no one knew. My father stood in the doorway, pale with fury. "You could have been killed." I was documenting the scene. "You ran toward him." I ran toward proof. He stepped forward as if to seize my phone, then stopped when I lifted it. "Touch me," I said, "and the recording goes to the police." There was no recording.
He believed me anyway.
That frightened me more than the fire. The police arrived 20 minutes later. My father told them the attack was random vandalism. I contradicted him. He glared at me while I described the threatening meeting at school, the missing slides, and the shoe I had photographed. The responding officer knew Aunt Evelyn. Of course he did. He studied the image and said dozens of students owned similar shoes. He suggested the fire might have been a prank. Before leaving, he advised my father to improve the shop's insurance. By breakfast, Aunt Evelyn had already heard. She came to the shop wearing a camel coat and concern. Caleb followed with a bandage around his right ankle. I looked at it.
He looked at me.
Neither of us mentioned the fence. "My poor brother," Evelyn said, embracing my father. "You should stay with us until the window is repaired." "No," I said. She turned slowly. "I wasn't speaking to you. You rarely are. You usually speak around me, over me, or about me." Caleb wandered toward the damaged projector.
"Shame.
Grandpa loved that thing." My father's shoulders stiffened. I watched Caleb crouch and touch the cracked lens. Soot marked his fingertips. "Funny," I said. "You knew which object was damaged before anyone told you." He glanced at the overturned stand. "It's obvious." The projector was under a dust cover when police arrived. Dad removed it after they left. A beat of silence. Caleb smiled. Then I guessed.
No.
"You aimed." Evelyn's concern evaporated. "That accusation is serious." "So was the fire." "Do you have proof?" I held up my phone. "Enough to make you ask." My father suddenly seized the metal case from beneath the counter. All 4 of us froze. He looked at me, then at Evelyn. His hands trembled again. "This ends today." Hope rose so quickly it hurt. Then he walked outside. I followed him into the alley, through the back lot, and toward his van. "Where are you going?" "To do what I should have done years ago. Expose them." He opened the rear door and placed the case beside a shovel. My hope died. "You're burying it." "I'm keeping you alive." I grabbed the case. He pulled it back. Caleb emerged from the shop and leaned against the doorway, watching with a faint smile. That smile told me everything. The attack had not been intended to destroy the slides. It had been intended to frighten my father into doing it himself. I released the case. My father blinked, surprised.
Fine, I said.
Bury them. Caleb's smile widened. I turned away. Pattern interrupted. Because the case my father carried contained 87 blank mounts and 9 photographs of my bedroom ceiling. At 3:40 that morning, while he spoke to police, Nadia had arrived on her bicycle carrying archival sleeves, cotton gloves, and a portable film scanner she had borrowed from the journalism room. I had texted her after the first brick. Her response had been 3 words: "Do not clean anything." We scanned every original slide in the stockroom, photographed the labels, and transferred the film into an unmarked lunchbox hidden inside a bag of expired photographic paper. Nadia took the digital copies. I kept the originals. The metal case became bait. My father drove toward the quarry. I let him go. At school, rumors about the fire reached every classroom before the morning bell. Caleb told people I had accused him because I was jealous of his exhibition project. By second period, someone had edited my face onto a conspiracy poster. By lunch, the headmaster called me unstable during a staff meeting he assumed would remain private. Nadia had placed a recorder outside the door. "What now?" she asked beneath the east stairwell. "Now, they think the evidence is gone." "Is it?" "My father will bury the decoy. Unless he opens it." "He won't. He's terrified of seeing the slides again." Nadia studied me. "You sound certain." "I know him." That was the lie I still needed to believe. We divided the scanned images into categories. The ordinary school photographs established provenance. The ledger slide showed dates, student initials, payments, and exam codes. The document slides revealed altered scholarship rankings. One image displayed my mother's handwritten notes beside a copied chemistry paper. Another showed Evelyn holding an envelope marked with Vale's initials. The most important slide seemed useless. It showed an empty classroom at night. Nadia enlarged it. "Why photograph this?" "Maybe Grandpa took it accidentally." Glass slides were expensive. He labeled it. On the cardboard mount, faded ink read, B17, 1142, reflection. We increased contrast. In the dark window at the back of the classroom, 3 figures appeared reflected from the corridor. One was Grandpa holding the camera. One was Vale. The third wore a white ribbon. My mother. Vale's hand was around her throat. I stopped breathing. Nadia zoomed farther. On the desk in front of the window lay a tape recorder. Beside it sat a small black notebook. "Your grandfather wasn't photographing the classroom," she said. "He was photographing the reflection because Vale could not see the lens from the corridor." My hands went cold. There may have been an audio tape. And a notebook. Neither was in the case. "Who has them?" I knew before I answered. "My father." That evening, I followed his van from a distance on Nadia's bicycle. He drove beyond the quarry, turned onto a logging road, and stopped in the pine field. Through binoculars, I watched him dig beneath a dead cedar. He lowered the metal case into the hole. Then Aunt Evelyn stepped from behind the trees. My father dropped the shovel. She was not alone. Headmaster Vale stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets. I activated the recorder in my bag and moved closer through the brush. "You promised to destroy them," Evelyn said. "I am." "Open the case." My father did not move. Vale's voice remained gentle. "Daniel, we have lived with this arrangement for a long time. There is no reason to make it unpleasant. You set fire to my shop." Caleb became overenthusiastic, Evelyn said. He was frightened. "He nearly killed Mara. He knew you would protect her." My father looked at his sister. "You always say that as if using my love against me makes you clever." Evelyn's expression sharpened. "Open it." He knelt and released the latches. Even from the trees, I heard the breath leave him. Blank slides. My father lifted one of the photographs of my ceiling. On the back, I had written a message. "You buried the wrong daughter's future once. Not again." Evelyn ripped it from his hand. Vale scanned the trees. "She's here." I stepped backward. A branch cracked beneath my shoe. Caleb rose from a ditch behind me. He had been waiting. Before I could scream, He clamped one hand over my mouth and twisted my arm behind my back. "You really do love repeating mistakes," he whispered. The quarry wind carried the smell of wet stone. For one horrifying instant, I was 23 again, fighting his grip at the cliff edge. My body remembered death. It went rigid. Caleb felt it and laughed softly. "There you are." He dragged me into the clearing. My father lunged toward us, but Vale raised a pistol. Everything stopped. Evelyn stared at the weapon. "Gideon, put that away. You said she was alone. She is a child. She is a liability." The polished headmaster vanished. What remained was a frightened old criminal who had mistaken decades without consequences for invincibility. Caleb held me tighter. "Where are the originals?" "Safe." "Where?" "Somewhere your shoes can't reach." He jerked my arm higher. Pain flashed through my shoulder. My father took one step forward. Vale pointed the gun at him. "Tell us," my father said to me. I stared at him. "Tell them where the slides are," he repeated.
Please.
Old disappointment opened inside me. Even now, I thought. Even now, he would surrender. Then his eyes dropped deliberately to my bag. The recorder. He wanted them talking. I swallowed my anger and understood. "The originals are in the projector," I said. Evelyn frowned. "The broken projector?" "There's a hollow space beneath the lamp housing. Grandpa designed it." That was not true, but it was believable because old machines looked mysterious to people who never repaired them. Vale turned to Evelyn. "Call the shop." "No signal here." "Then Kayla goes." Caleb's grip loosened slightly. My father moved. He threw the blank slide at Vale's face, grabbed the shovel, and struck the gun from his hand. I drove my heel down onto Caleb's injured foot. He shouted and released me. Evelyn lunged for the pistol. Nadia reached it first. She stepped from behind the van wearing yellow cycling gloves and kicked the weapon beneath the chassis. Everyone stared at her. She lifted her phone. Live stream. It was not a live stream. There was no signal. But Evelyn believed her. She covered her face. Pattern interrupted. Nadia had followed me because she correctly assumed my plan was terrible. Vale ran toward the road. My father tackled him. Caleb shoved me into the open grave and sprinted in the opposite direction. I caught the edge, dragged myself out, and saw him disappear toward the quarry trail. In my first life, I would have chased him. This time I went to my father. Vale had wrapped a forearm around his throat. I grabbed the fallen shovel and struck the ground beside Vale's head, spraying dirt into his eyes. My father rolled free. Nadia retrieved the pistol with a branch and slid it into an evidence bag she had somehow brought. "You carry those?" I asked. I hoped for fingerprints, not attempted murder. Sirens sounded faintly beyond the trees. "You called police?" She shook her head. My father sat up, breathing hard. "I did." He pulled an old flip phone from his pocket. The call had remained connected inside his coat. For once, his fear had produced action instead of silence. Evelyn stared at him, as if he had betrayed her. He looked back and said, "No, Evie. I finally stopped betraying everyone else." The arrest should have ended everything. They did not. Power rarely collapses in one dramatic moment. It fractures, denies the sound, hires a lawyer, and announces that the crack was always part of the design. Vale claimed the pistol belonged to my grandfather, and that my father had planted it. Evelyn said she had gone to the field because Daniel sounded suicidal. Caleb returned to school the next morning wearing a medical boot and told everyone I had attacked him during a family dispute. The academy placed me on temporary suspension for creating a danger to student welfare. No one mentioned the fire. No one mentioned the grave. The police took Nadia's recorder, the blank case, and the pistol, but the recording from the pine field was muffled by wind. Vale's lawyer argued that the clearest statements lacked context. The officer who had dismissed the fire report described us as a troubled family with conflicting stories. Then my father disappeared. He left before dawn 2 days after the arrests were released on bail. His bed had not been slept in. The van remained outside. On the kitchen table, he left the basement key and a note containing only 4 words. "I'm finishing her project." I read it twice, then ran downstairs. The broken projector was gone. So were the original slides. For one terrible hour, I believed fear had reclaimed him. I imagined him meeting Evelyn somewhere private, trading evidence for another promise that she would leave me alone. That was what he had always done, mistaken temporary quiet for safety. Then Nadia found fresh sawdust beneath Grandpa's workbench. We lifted the tabletop. Inside a compartment deeper than the false drawer lay a black notebook and a cassette tape labeled in my mother's handwriting, "Founders Night." My father had not taken the final evidence. He had taken the machine needed to present it. The Academy refused to postpone the Founders exhibition. Vale called it proof that Bellwether would not be distracted by malicious personal attacks. Caleb remained the favorite to win. His project, according to posters covering the halls, would celebrate the Academy's century of ethical leadership. The arrogance was almost beautiful. Nadia and I spent the next 3 nights restoring my mother's work. The notebook contained names, dates, payment records, and instructions for advancing favored students through scholarship rankings. The tape held my mother's voice. At first, she sounded calm. This recording documents a meeting with Gideon Vale on October 18th. He has requested that I surrender the photographic evidence and withdraw from the exhibition. Then came footsteps. Vale's younger voice demanded the notebook. My mother refused. There was a struggle, a chair falling, and her sudden gasp. My grandfather shouted from the corridor. Evelyn screamed that the tape had to be destroyed. The recording ended with my father's voice. 19 years old. Terrified. "I'll say I took the photographs," he said. "Just let her go." I listened again. My father had not merely stayed silent. He had tried to confess to a crime he did not commit to protect my mother. She stopped him. Minutes later, Evelyn planted the chemistry photographs in her locker anyway. Fear had not been his first choice. It had been what remained after courage failed. On exhibition night, Bellwether's auditorium glittered with donors, parents, alumni, and journalists invited to praise the school's resilience. Security guarded every entrance. My suspension barred me from campus. Fortunately, the original building plans in Grandpa's notebook showed a projection booth accessible from the abandoned costume room. Nadia entered through the front as a student reporter. I climbed the ivy, crossed the maintenance roof, and slipped through a window whose latch had been broken since 1989. Caleb began his presentation at 8. From the booth, I watched him stand beneath a digital screen displaying the words "honor" without compromise. Aunt Evelyn sat in the front row. Vale occupied the center of the stage, free on bail and smiling for cameras. Caleb spoke about integrity. That was the funniest part. 3 minutes into his speech, the auditorium lights failed. People murmured. Caleb looked toward the technicians. Then an old fan began to turn behind me. My father stepped from the darkness and placed Grandpa's repaired slide projector on the booth table. "You came," I whispered. I almost didn't. His hands were shaking badly. He tried to load the first slide, but the mount rattled against the tray. I covered his hand with mine. "Together," I said. The projector beam crossed the auditorium. My mother appeared above Caleb's head, 17 years old, wearing a white ribbon and holding the medal that had been taken from her. The room fell silent.
Vale Sotod.
"Turn that off." My father pushed the first slide into place. Ledger pages replaced my mother's face. Names and payments towered across the screen. Aunt Evelyn rose. Security. The doors opened. But the people entering were not guards. They were detectives, followed by 2 state education investigators, and the reporter Nadia had quietly contacted with copies of the evidence. My father had spent his missing days giving a formal statement and arranging warrants before returning to finish the presentation. Caleb abandoned the microphone. I took it from the booth system. "My name is Mara Mercer," I said, my voice filling the auditorium. 6 years from now, if no one stops them, these people will kill me for showing you what you are about to see. That sentence belonged to another life. No one could understand it. They listened anyway. Pattern interrupted. I played the tape. My mother's voice entered the auditorium after 25 years of forced silence. Vale shouted for technicians to cut power, but the projector ran from a battery my father had built into its base. Evelyn tried to leave. Detectives blocked the aisle. When the sound of the struggle played, Caleb looked at his mother. For the first time, he seemed to realize he had not inherited control. He had inherited evidence. The final slide showed the dark classroom window, Vale's hand reflected around my mother's throat. My father walked onto the stage. He carried no prepared speech. "I was afraid," he said. "That fear cost my wife her name, my daughter her trust, and students I never met their futures. I called silence protection because admitting the truth would mean admitting what I had allowed. I am sorry, but tonight, I will not ask anyone to forgive me. I will only tell the truth while it can still help." His hands continued shaking. He did not hide them. Vale was arrested before the applause began. Evelyn followed when investigators matched the notebook against archived financial records. Caleb tried to claim he had known nothing until police recovered his burned shoe covering from the alley fence and found messages arranging the fire. He looked at me while they led him away. "You ruined your own family," he said.
No, iyan suara.
"I stopped you from using that word as camouflage." Bellwether did not survive the year. The board dissolved. Scholarships were transferred to other schools. My mother's record was formally corrected, and the Founders Exhibition Prize was awarded to her estate. The $10,000 paid the debts on my father's shop. Nadia published the investigation under the title "The Images They Tried to Bury." She included every victim, not just my family. That mattered. Revenge makes a satisfying ending, but justice becomes real only when it reaches people whose names never made the headline. My father and I did not repair our relationship in a montage. Some mornings, I could drink coffee with him and remember the boy on the tape offering himself in my mother's place. Other mornings, I saw him at the quarry in my previous life, pleading after it was too late. He never asked why I knew things before they happened. Perhaps he was afraid of the answer. A year later, we carried the restored projector to my mother's grave. My father brought a shovel. For one sharp second, the sight of it pulled me back to the pine field. He noticed. "I thought we could bury something," he said. From his pocket, he removed the basement lock. Not the slides. Not the projector. The lock. We dug a small hole beside the cedar fence and placed it inside. My father covered it with earth. His hands shook, but less than before. "What happens now?" he asked. I looked at the projector resting safely in its case, then at the name carved into my mother's stone. "In my first life," I said, "I thought surviving meant becoming impossible to hurt." He waited. "I was wrong. It means refusing to let pain choose what I do next." He did not understand the words "first life." He understood the rest. Years later, I became an archival investigator, specializing in evidence hidden inside ordinary objects. Photographs cropped too tightly, recordings labeled incorrectly, documents stored behind false walls. People often asked why I trusted damaged things. I told them damaged things were honest about having survived. On the 6th anniversary of the night I had once died, I returned alone to the quarry. The guardrail had been replaced. Wildflowers grew along the cliff. Far below, the water remained black. I held one final slide to the moonlight. Nadia had discovered it fused inside the projector's cracked lens. Grandpa must have hidden it there when the case became unsafe. The image showed my mother, my father, and me as a baby outside the camera shop. On the cardboard frame, my mother had written a sentence. "Truth does not return by itself. Someone must carry it." In my first life, I carried it to the wrong person. In my second, I carried it into the light. Behind me, gravel shifted. I turned quickly. My father stood several steps away, holding 2 cups of coffee. He looked toward the quarry, then at the slide in my hand. "I thought you might come here," he said. For a moment, the old terror passed between us. The cliff, the silence, the future that had happened, and the future we had broken. Then he offered me 1 cup. I took it. We walked away from the edge together. The projector remained in our shop window after that, repaired but never sold. Beneath it sat a small card explaining that it had once been ordered buried by a frightened man and preserved by a daughter who refused. Customers sometimes asked whether the story was true. My father always looked at me before answering. His hands still shook. His voice did not. "Every frame," he said. Sometimes, late at night, I switch off the shop lights and run that final slide through the projector. Dust drifts through the beam like stars. My mother smiles on the wall, unaware of what waits beyond the frame. I used to wish I could warn her. Now I understand that warnings are not mercy. She deserved that unbroken second of happiness. I also understand why I returned. It was not to punish Caleb, expose Evelyn, or force my father to become brave. Those were consequences, not purpose. I returned because truth unfinished becomes a door, and someone had to walk back through it. The quarry exists. Fear still visits. My father still wakes from dreams he will not describe. I remember cold water closing over my head. But memory is no longer a grave. It is a projector. It takes what was hidden, holds it against light, and makes it larger than the darkness that tried to contain it. This time, everyone saw. Everything changed.